Yep.
Welcome to the Nerd Show Show. I am Nathan.
And I'm Colin.
So we are back after a couple weeks break between Loki, the season finale of Loki. So we're going to talk about Bad Batch tonight, episode 11 through I think 14 is the last one. We're only two more.
14 has been. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have 2 more episodes left.
two more episodes until the end of the season, and it's actually getting pretty good. So we're going to talk about the last few episodes, last 4 episodes. We're going to talk a little bit about Masters of Universe Revelation, more about the controversy over it. I guess a bit more than a review. I mean, I guess we'll say a little bit about what we think about the first 5 episodes. And then we'll talk about, I guess, the new news that dropped about Scarlett Johansson suing Disney over the Black Widow movie, because that's pretty interesting as well. All right, so Colin, what did you? I guess we can start off with the. Well, I guess we kind of talk about them in a block, as opposed to one after another. So I guess the first episode of that we haven't talked about was Devil's Deal, and then
Devil's Deal, yep.
12 is Rescue at Ryloth, and 13 was Infested, and 14 just this morning was War Mantle. So what did you think of the last couple episodes of the Bad Batch, the last 4 episodes of the Bad Batch?
Yeah, it was very interesting that they made a change of pace with the 11th episode, which was the Devil's Deal episode, and so they basically we get taken back to Ryloth, and so the last time we kind of saw Ryloth was during the Star Wars Rebels series that was a few years back, and so this is definitely a younger version of what's her name again? I know it's Spindula. Hera Spindula.
Hera, yeah.
Yeah, so we see a younger version of Hera that's there, and she has an accent, which is kind of interesting because in the Rebels series, if you remember correctly, she didn't really have an accent, so you still have that accent. And so I was watching a lot of the behind-the-scenes work, and so what happened was that, for each of the planets, I think George Lucas wanted to have some sort of uniqueness to it, and so it happened that on Ryloth, a lot of the people had French accents, so that's probably that's kind of where that came from. And so it was very interesting to kind of get away from the Bad Batch. They kind of brought them in a little bit with Omega being befriending Hera because of some weapons run they were trying to do. They were starting to set up an insurrection because of the fact that the Empire was already kind of occupying Ryloth at that time. And so there's a lot of kind of political intrigue and machinations with the senator that's there, and just trying to kind of find out what the grasp for power is at that point. So it was kind of interesting to kind of see all those kind of machinations and things like that during the episode, and again and then also kind of in some ways a prequel to the Rebels show.
Yeah, so I appreciated that episode for, as you said, I watched Rebels, and I didn't watch it in like we are doing now week to week. I think when we first started this season, I said that I watched Rebels and also Clone Wars sort of as a binge, and I was feeling at the beginning of the season that it was sort of this show was sort of bingeable, not necessarily something that you can watch week to week. However, I mean, these episodes, as we get to the end of the season, it's showing a lot more. It's written. They're written in a way that I guess adults can enjoy from week to week, even though they're only 30 minutes, because you're getting insights into. There's connections to Rebels, but there are also insights into how the Empire is building its power base, how it's consolidating power, how and that's it's just interesting for people who are interested in Star Wars in general, but it's also interesting from as a study of power dynamics in our world as well. So it's the last couple episodes have been really good I guess television, really good, well written, less I guess child oriented. Again,
Hmm.
I don't think that this I was actually this week teaching a bunch of kids, and we're talking about Adult Swim. I don't think I don't think, and as I was talking to the kids, they're the show a kid can definitely appreciate it, but there are definitely some things that adults will appreciate as well. So
Yes.
week to week. Whereas the first few episodes, it seemed to be very very kid oriented. Um, it was cool to actually see some backstory with Hera, but also with her father, because her father I think shows up in Clone Wars as well. So you can see his transition.
Yes.
You can see his transition from Clone Wars, where he was reluctant to take help from the Republic, and then he took it from the Republic, and now he's feeling like that was a bad choice, because he thought he probably should have gone. Well, he's thinking that he should have gone with his first mind, but they were kind of pinned down and being attacked by the Separatists. And
Hmm.
then when we see him in Rebels, he's like a bittered old man. So it's interesting to see the middle part of
Hmm.
how he felt, or how he got to that bittered old man. So yeah, it's episode was interesting. Also, in that they stepped away from the Clone Force 99, as you said, and you kind of focused on just Ryloth, except for that little weapons run. They come into it in the next episode, which is what was it? Rescue of Ryloth,
Yeah.
because of the machinations of the Empire, and the I forget, is it the same guy who's also in Camino? Is it the same?
Um.
Because
Yeah, I'm not really sure which. You mean the same general
the
that
same general, yeah,
the
the Admiral, yeah.
it could, yeah, it could be because he was at the very beginning of the episode with Tarkin.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he was one of those guys. Like he was like second in command.
Mm-hmm.
Tarkin was there, and he was like basically
Mm-hmm.
shuttling off to that. And also because Crosshair was in the first, when he kind of they had the chip turned on him,
Mm-hmm.
that he was kind of like his almost like a first lieutenant or something like that. I think that was the case.
Yeah, I guess he's going to be the bad guy, the big bad for the Bad Batch show, whereas I guess Crosshair is his lieutenant, or we'll see, because the end of the last episode. Well, jumping ahead.
Hmm.
Rescue at Ryloth was so this guy, the Admiral, that we can't place his name off the top of our heads. He orchestrates a situation that lands Hera's mother and father in jail, and she
Hmm.
has a connection with Omega in the Devil's
Yeah.
Deal
Yeah. Hmm.
episode. So she calls out to her for help, and Omega, as convincing as she is gets the guys to go and go on this rescue run. This episode. So, what did you think of this episode?
Yeah, I think that definitely it's strange in some ways because I think that I think at first you kind of saw the progression of Omega being kind of like the precocious child, and so now it's almost like as though she has a lot under her belt, and so they kind of her brothers kind of trust her a lot more with the decisions, and I think that from there it just this kind of plays out in a few episodes as well. But I think that it was very interesting to kind of see that they just kind of jumped in and just kind of helped them out and kind of trust her in these type of decisions. It's probably because of the remember the episode where she was playing the game with Hunter
Mm-hmm.
and discussing strategy, and I think that probably kind of helped her to kind of evolve a little bit and mature a little bit over the course of time. And so I just found that very fascinating. And also, again, very fascinating to kind of find out, the beginnings of Hera, flying a ship.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the time, she was not very, she wanted to, you knew that she dreamt of flying a ship someday and living there. And so there was a story about how Omega was telling her that, oh, this is my kind of space that I live in and sleep in and stuff like that. And so she thought that was so fascinating. So it kind of like the groundwork, the seeds they're being.
Yeah, I think your video may have frozen as you were talking. I'm looking at the feed here. Let me see if I can fix that so we can actually see your expressions as you're talking. Let's see. My All right, so let me disconnect Skype and reconnect it. Hopefully that will solve the issue. So we are going to go away briefly and come back in a second. All right, it took a little bit longer than I was expecting the machine, but I can see you moving now, so that's good.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, I appreciate the connective tissue between Rebels and this show. As you said, we get sort of the origin story of Hera's love of flight that we see in Rebels. I guess you started to see that story in the previous episode as well, because she has this conversation with her uncle about trying to fly, and he lets her fly. He's even as a kid, but he won't let her land. And we actually see Omega flying in the next couple episodes as well. After that conversation, so that's I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate the connective connection to that show. But even if you didn't know that, it was still an enjoyable episode, just to see how the connection between the 99ers and Omega is starting to strengthen. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Most definitely. I think that definitely there's some themes that are going throughout the episode that are really appealing. Again, it forces the audience to kind of revisit a lot of the old shows, whether or not it's Clone Wars, whether or not it's Rebels. So definitely I would say that a lot of the people would kind of pick up Rebels again and then rewatch it probably, or people that haven't watched Rebels, they'll be like, okay, now it's time to do it in many ways. So good strategy by Disney Plus to kind of like fill in all the connective tissue in a way that's organic, but it's not kind of force fed to you.
Right. I mean, so I think that if you want to go back and see those episodes, I think you have incentive to, especially if you connected to the characters of character Hera, and wanted to see more. So it definitely rewards fans who watch those episodes, but also rewards fans who are starting to get into the storyline. There's more story out there. So, but you don't necessarily have to go and seek that out if you don't want to. But if you do, it's there. There's a lot more there, and I hope that they actually continue to do this. Like, there are only 2 more episodes left in this season, so they're probably not going to do it in the next 2 episodes, just because of how episode 14 ended. But I hope they take the opportunity next season to do it actually a little bit more than they did in this season, just to see what else is going on in the universe, or sorry, going on in the galaxy, because whereas Rebels kind of stayed with the same crew all the time, Clone Wars kind of jumped around in different places, and it was interesting to see what was going on at different points of the war all over the galaxy, without having to focus on. I mean, our main characters, of course, were Anakin and Obi-Wan, but we got to see other pairs off. We got to see Anakin and Ahsoka. Sometimes we got to see Ahsoka by herself. We got to see all kinds of things. We got to see, there was an episode of just Yoda, I think, when he was trying to like connect with like Qui-Gon. So it'd be interesting to see things like that in season 2 of Bad Batch, if it gets a season 2. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that in the next couple of episodes, I think Infested was the next episode after this, and so that was more of reintroduction in some ways to the Pike crime syndicate, and so
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of interesting, and all about spice and about spice dealings and stuff like that. So that episode was more of a throwaway, I would
Yeah.
think. But again, it might be that they're trying to set up the Pike syndicate, crime syndicate, as something more sinister in later episodes. So it could be just a setup episode in many ways, and the individual that they that I think that was taken away Sid's like place.
Mm-hmm.
I think that character probably will be back some way somehow in some other season, in like revisit in season 2, because again it seemed like it was a throwaway episode, but hopefully they kind of established that relationship a little bit more later
Yeah,
on.
I mean, so you got in this episode. It's definitely the weaker of the four
Hmm.
for me. That said, I think that we get to hear or get a better sense of Sid, besides just being a wheeler dealer and kind of just sending the guys out on missions, or the crew out on missions, because we have
Hmm.
Omega as well. So you get more of a sense of who she is, and also her political power, or her power base in the on the planet, and where she kind of sits on the pecking order. Because at this point these guys are beholden to her, because they don't have any better option. But there are bigger wolves out there than her, and they're not and they're bigger wolves than the wolves that are bigger than her as well. If we're talking about
Hmm.
the Pike Syndicate, so it's interesting to see where she sits on that hierarchy. And as you said, the guy who shows up and displaces her before she outmaneuvers him into getting her place back, he might show up again. We don't know. What was also interesting in this episode is her, Omega befriending him a little bit, or at least
Hmm.
taking pity on him. So
Right.
so that might come back as some, I don't know, some credit for the team when they need him in the future, because she showed him that kindness. So I think that
Right.
if he shows up again, that's the capacity he'll show up again.
Yeah, yeah, most likely. So yeah, it's definitely some sort of, hopefully some setup episode instead of just kind of a throwaway one. But I think that yeah, there were a few of those in the beginning of the season as well
Yeah.
that we're kind of like, oh, what's going on here? But maybe they're streams that they want to pick up, or just kind of let go. We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have the current episode, or the episode today, which the title off the top of my head, it's but I can look it up. Do you know it off the top of your head?
It was the War Mantle.
War Mantle. So this was a really good episode.
Hmm.
Just, I mean, there's a lot of action, a lot of action. Also, we get a lot of, the governmental transition from the Republic to the Empire, and sort of what we saw at the beginning of the season. The admiral's push to decommission the clones. We can see
Hmm.
that, we can see it in full force, and we can actually see the bridge from the Republic to the Empire is now, we're on the other side now. We're in the full Empire, because they changed the uniforms, or sorry, the
Hmm.
new armor, and they're not, they thought they were fighting, clones, but no, they're conscripted, no, conscripted, or recruits. They're recruits. I guess they're
The
recruiting
recruits,
people.
yeah.
They're recruiting people from all across the galaxy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very interesting. One thing that I think we forgot from the previous episode was the other clone. Speaking of clones, was Hauser, and like how he's gonna come in, because in Ryloth he kind of like took a few of his
Yeah.
troopers and stuff like that. That was very interesting.
I thought
And
it was Hauser at the beginning of this episode, because
yeah,
he wasn't really speaking. He was just running. So I thought it was Hauser running, and the
yeah,
clones all of course look alike until he started speaking, and he had the connection to Rex. And I don't know if Hauser actually knows Rex. But yeah, I thought it was Hauser. I thought it was Hauser
yeah. It
running.
wasn't Hauser actually. I think it was. It could have been the. I don't know if you remember the episode from Clone Wars where Rex was with like a deserter, like one of the clone deserters, and he had a family and something like that. it could have been that guy, but I'm not 100% sure.
No,
I
no,
have
no.
to kind of have to see if that was the case.
The deserter showed up earlier in this season. In this season, the Bad Batch. Remember, the
Oh.
Rex sent him, so he's still with his family.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I will say that this guy that ran away with the sorry this guy that they free on Rex's bequest.
Hmm.
Um, he might be, if you remember the episode of Rebels, when in the future when they're all in this they're all in this they're all older.
Yes.
He might be one of them because Rex is one of them, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think he could have been one of the crazy-eyed ones. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
from
He said,
Rebels. I think he could have been that
I think
guy.
that's what they were doing. They were trying to say because all his
Oh,
verbal
okay.
tics and things like that. I think he was the crazy one in that group. I,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because he had like some tendencies where his voice was modulating and stuff. It
right,
kind of reminded me of that character. So it was
right.
that's very interesting, though. That's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Again, more connective tissue to the past and also the future. I don't know if he shows up in I don't remember. I mean, there are a lot of episodes of Clone Wars. He might have showed up in the previous episode as well,
Mm,
with Rex. So it's obvious to people who know these episodes back and forth. There's something that we're missing, but
right.
I think he definitely shows up with Rex in the future with when they're out in the desert. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely another episode which kind of like see you can see that transition directly to the Empire, and then we kind of heard before about how
Right.
that'll be very interesting to kind of see what will happen to Hunter,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not they can experiment on him and things like that. So. And also whether or not the Kaminoans, what's going to happen with them, because
Mm-hmm.
I think the person that was with Omega, the Kaminoan who was with Omega, Nalase, I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
she had a group of young clones, and like kind of like in some ways she was kind of whisking them away
Mm-hmm.
from Camino, and then also with the Prime Minister,
Yeah,
making sure where is that going to happen.
I wasn't sure what was
Yeah,
happening there.
yeah.
At first I thought, are they going to destroy these children because
Hmm.
they're decommissioning the clones. It seemed very ominous because the young clonelings or whatever they were like, we're not supposed to we're not supposed to go off world. So yeah, it was interesting to see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and also there, with all these shows that Disney Plus has done, there's always one big appearance that comes in at the end. So, could it be Boba Fett? Maybe. Boba Fett should be teenager by now, I think, around the
Yeah, he should
teenage
be
age.
he should be a
Yeah.
teenager. He's naturally teenager or young adult. So he should be maybe 18, 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wonder with the book of Boba Fett coming later this year, you wonder if Boba Fett's going to show up again,
Hmm.
and whether or not there's going to be a relationship that's going to be established between Fennec, because we saw Fennec already
Hmm.
in this series. So whether or not they kind of had that before we saw the events of the Mandalorian. So we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot still moving parts involved with it. I do not think that Vader's going to show up. I think that would be way too crazy if Darth Vader shows up. But you never know. I think that there's definitely an appearance by someone within the last two episodes, more than likely.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna get a reckoning with Crosshair, of course,
Hmm.
given
Yep.
how the end of the episode ended with Hunter getting captured and Crosshair being a bit too delighted that Hunter got captured, given that I don't know they probably were in so many battles together and they basically probably saved each other's lives so many times. I don't his I understand he's mind controlled, but he seems to be getting like a perverse glee out of betraying them as well, because I don't know how all the clones don't seem to be completely devoid of emotion.
Hmm.
even though they have the chips in, because we saw Hauser be able go against orders. This guy, this trainer, is presumably his chip is still intact, and he deserted. So I think there's a certain part of Crosshair, regardless of the chip, who wants to do this, and he's taking a bit of a glee in doing this. So it'd be interesting. I mean, this episode had so much action that I actually would be open to an episode where just the two of them talking back and forth about, you know, their perspectives on who portrayed who would be interesting to me. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
definitely some things to look forward to in the last 2 episodes.
Yeah. All right, so we are going to talk a little bit about Master of the Universe Revelation. I don't have a graphic for it, so I'm just going to show this graphic because this isn't a full review, so we don't have a review graphic for it. So just so we can see the whatchamacallit change. Sorry, the topic change rather. So. I guess we can just talk first of all. I guess our general impressions of the show, and then we can delve into some of the controversy, or I don't know if it's really controversy. I think a lot of people just like the show, and then there are the people who were going to hate the show regardless of what showed up, and they're very, very loud and very, very annoying. So
right.
What do you think of the first 3 episodes?
Now, this is coming from a person that has not watched the original 80s cartoon. So I had not watched it before. I've watched bits and pieces of it. I've watched it on Robot Chicken, on Adult Swim. You mentioned about Adult Swim earlier. You know, of course, it has been on there a couple of times, you know, making fun of Masters of the Universe. I actually went and revisited a lot of the Robot Chicken ones, which is very funny. And then also just overall... actually, I think one of my first action figures was He-Man and Triclops, the
really?
green guy with the rotating. So actually,
so you had the action figures, but you didn't watch the show.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were a Mattel person. So this show is actually made for you. You're this because Kevin Smith talks a lot about this show, so I know from like press interviews that, you know, this is supposed to be like a spiritual sequel to the show, but the show is owned by like Hanna-Barbera or so, and the toys are owned by Mattel, and then I think DC Comics apparently wrote a little bit of the backstory as well, so they might own some part of that also. So, but they don't own the rights to the show, so they can't actually say it's a real sequel to the show. It's more about the toys. Yeah.
I think those 2 were my first action figures. The only reason why I know this is because my parents took a picture of that when I was 4 years old. So that's the only reason why I remember that. Anyway. So in any case, I mean, it's not as a big of a left impression on me during all those Saturday morning cartoons. He-Man's Master of the Universe wasn't that big in terms of leaving a lasting impact. I mean, you hear it from other places and things like that. You kind of get soaked into it if you're into like G.I. Joe, you're into Transformers. I mean, that was actually, you know, those 2 were actually bigger for me as, you know, watching cartoons and stuff like that. And so I think that generally I just kind of saw it as though, oh, it's just nostalgia again. It's 80s nostalgia. It's like, you know, sitting in front of the TV, you know, eating your cereal and just watching cartoons, basically. So if you kind of like saw it like that, okay, great, and just kind of leave it at that, that's fine. But I think that for you know, we'll get into the controversy later, but that type of interpretation of the whole experience of sitting in front of the TV with your cereal, watching that cartoon, you know, has a lot of kind of feelings for many, many different types of people. And so for me, it's just, it was kind of like a continuation of what I saw as a child. And I kind of, and Netflix had done this before with Transformers. And so I think that the Transformers series actually had a better story. they had a better kind of a linear model to what was talking. It was more compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this one was kind of like, okay, it was great. I kind of liked it, but there were some things that I was just like, no, they didn't do that. They come on, they did not do this. They did not do that, and there are too many jokes and cheesy jokes that are on there that were like, come on, don't do that. And so I think that there are some things that kind of took it away from me in some ways, but overall I still enjoyed it. It wasn't anything that kind of made me outraged or anything like that. I just kind of enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah. So my experience is a little bit different in that I mean I did watch the show. I definitely had
Mm-hmm.
the toys as well. I remember having the toys because I it was my favorite show when I was very little. But
Oh wow.
but when I was very little, so like I don't remember a lot of the episodes, but I remember it made an impression on me. So like
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Smith says that he was 13 when he saw it, so
Oh,
he's
okay.
like 13 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, he's like 10 years older than me is what I meant to say. He's 10 years older than me. So I was like 3 or 4 or 5
Mm-hmm.
when I was watching the show. So but yeah, I collected the stuff. I think I had the castle. I had Castle Grayskull, and I wanted to get more things, and my mom wouldn't let me get more things to play with, more action figures to play with. So I liked the show, but I also had a bunch of the toys. I mean, the show was basically a 30-minute commercial. I didn't know that when I was a child, but of course it
Of
was.
course.
But yeah, I have fond memories of the show. I can't say that I watched all the episodes when I was a kid, and if I were to watch any of the episodes now, I'm sure they would be terrible.
Yes, they would
As
probably be.
to my adult eyes, because it just a lot of the '80s television shows were just 30-minute toy commercials, and they weren't well written, and also they weren't well animated because they did like the cheapest animation back then to kind of to turn it out. The articulation was very limited. So, but you're a
Mm-hmm.
kid, right? So you fill in the gaps with your imagination. So
Of course.
it was so big. He-Man was a big deal to me when I was a little kid. I can remember that even if I can't remember the specificity of it. So I well, it wasn't the what I was chomping at the bit to it to watch it. I was definitely interested,
Mm-hmm.
and for the most part, I liked what he did. I think some of the cheesiness that you noticed in the writing was sort of part of the original show, and
Yeah.
they were trying to pull that through. Um, I, as an adult, didn't mind the big reveals. It made it a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more interesting to me. I don't think that if they redid the show and didn't do anything that would pull in an adult audience, I don't see what the point of it is. It's basically it's just a kids show, And there are kids shows, like I said, like we've said months ago when we started talking about Bad Batch, that are written well and you can pull in adults. Like they reimagined Ashira. It's
Mm-hmm.
nothing like the original Shira, and it's very well written. It's very well written. It's very well acted. It, it doesn't seem to have any kind of connection to anything, um, but it's also definitely a kids show. It's like it has messages in there, but it's not like hit you over the head messages. So like in the 80s when we watched cartoons, they had the message in the show, and then at the end, just in case you missed it, there was like a special message that was like talking to the camera, the cartoon character.
Yeah.
There's more subtle messaging in She-Ra, the reboot, but it's definitely a kid show, and it's well done. Apparently they're making so many different Masters of the Universe stuff. So they're going to make a movie, and there's going to be a CGI version of Masters of the Universe as well coming at
Wow.
some point. So this is supposed to be the one for adults who grew up with the show in the 80s, whereas the CGI one is going to be for kids. So I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed it. I guess we can start talking about some of the twists and also what people disliked. So he, Kevin Smith and team killed Adam or
Mm-hmm.
He-Man in the first episode, and
Yes.
killed him because he's like in heaven.
Correct.
Later on, or the Eternia's version of heaven, and there was a lot of griping on the internet about it, the team emasculating He-Man and it becoming woman centered. And I don't know. I watched the episodes. I watched some of the episodes more than once
Mm-hmm.
to see if there was anything to what they're saying. I mean, I think it's like I said. I feel like it's a bunch of people who were looking for something to complain about. The second episode is about another character, but I think the people who are griping don't remember the previous the actual the original cartoon, because there were other episodes in that, even though it was a tour commercial that were focusing on other characters. And
Mm-hmm.
He-Man, you know, it would be boring all the time if He-Man just came in and beat everyone up without any sort of help. So there were a bunch of characters.
Yeah.
They had he had all these other characters, and I appreciated not necessarily sidelining He-Man, because He-Man is in every episode because they do flashbacks to these things and to his exploits in every single episode. They didn't really sideline him, but they did bring the other characters into focus, and I appreciated the world building and also the character development that they didn't really you really were never going to get in a cartoon for kids in the 80s. So I appreciated that, and like and as I said, expanding the world and explaining things in a way that deepens the lore. And apparently, some of the stuff that he pulled, like Castle Grayskull, was apparently the I forget what they call it, something of wisdom, Hall of Wisdom, or something like that.
Yeah.
In disguise. That apparently is not something he created. That's something that's from the toys from the 80s that just
Mm.
never made its way into the cartoon. Maybe because the people at Hasbro thought, or not Hasbro, was it Hanna-Barbera? I forget who made the
You said Hanna-Barbera. Yeah.
okay, that made the cartoon, thought it was above the heads of kids or whatever. So that's not something he made up. And apparently Mattel was very involved in everything that he did, so they checked off on everything that he did. So they were happy with the show. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there were a bunch of people looking to lambast the show as, you know, too woman centered. Also, people are complaining about the fact that Grayskull is a black person in like
Oh gosh.
in episode 4. So yeah,
Wow.
I don't know. What do you make of the controversy on the internet?
Wow. I think I didn't know about the part about Grayskull. I knew that he was black, but I didn't know that there was controversy about that. And I think from that perspective, I can see why the people that are ginning up all this controversy can see it as like wokeness gone awry type of thing. If you are a conservative, if you lean kind of more conservatively, you can see it from that standpoint. But I never kind of saw it from that standpoint as I was watching it, because, okay, yeah, Tila was kind of like the main character of the first part of it, but did it feel as though it was kind of her show? No, it didn't feel that way. It just felt like a quest, and
Yeah.
like about working together. Like people that are bad, like Evelyn
Mhm.
and Tila, and then also Orko.
Yeah.
And also I think I just kind of saw it as like a kind of like a team up of like good and bad people,
Mhm.
coming together to try to solve a problem. And I think that's pretty interesting to me. And you get to see kind of like you can like we talked about this before with Marvel stuff and with stuff that's going on, in the movies and stuff. I don't see that as like wokeness. I see it as though it's like character development and kind of like seeing people's vulnerabilities. We get to explore, Evelyn's vulnerabilities. We get to see Orko's vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Him being an outcast in his own homeworld. That's interesting. That's it. That I hope that they kind of explore more of that type of thing. And so I think that taking Adam away from it, taking Skeletor away from it, because they're just so iconic characters,
Mm-hmm.
you get to kind of focus on the other aspects of the characters, the supporting characters.
Right.
However, I think that people might, I saw on the internet it was about a bait and switch, and I'm like, well, yeah, it is. Yes, it is kind of like that.
It's also only
maybe
half
if they
of the
want to
show.
rebrand it as though it's not like that, then okay. Maybe I think that from their standpoint, maybe you rebranded and renamed it not Masters of the Universe, so that it's more like, because you're in the mindset of He-Man, but you're not getting He-Man. So I can see their point of view, but it's just, I think that it was kind of, I think to me it's kind of a little bit overblown. That's just my take on it.
I can see their point of view if Kevin Smith ever said that this show was supposed to be a sequel to He-Man in the Masters of the Universe, and it is not. That's why it's not called He-Man in the Masters of the Universe, because someone else owns that. It's a show that Mattel asked him to make. It's a Masters of the Universe show, so it's about a bunch of characters. He-Man is not the main character. He's like the Superman of the show. So
right.
Everything kind of revolves around him, which is why in every single episode you see He-Man in flashbacks, because everything is about him. Everyone's machinations and motions are about what he did or what he didn't do, or what he did, who he told or who he didn't tell. So all of that is about him. But yeah, it's also about the other characters as well. We get really great. So the second episode definitely is a Teela episode, but I don't think the 5 episodes are about Teela. I think the 5 episodes are about a lot of different people. We get a lot of character development for Evelyn. We got a lot more character development than I remember for Orko. He's far less annoying. You actually feel for Orko.
Yes,
and he goes out in a very heroic way in the show. So I don't know. I feel it's basically the same contingent on the internet who wants everything to be just as white as it was when they grew up, white and male centered as it was when they grew up. And if it isn't, there's a problem. And if it isn't, it's woke, and people are ruining their childhoods because, and they're their only real fans, and they pose questions like who is this for? It's not for the real fans, as if they can define who a real fan is. They know no black people, or they know no girls who grew up watching this. So since they knew no black people or no Asian people or no girls who grew up watching this, they think they don't exist, but they do. There were girls who watched the show, or black people who watched the show, because I watched the show, Asian people, just because if they decide to put characters in the show that reflect these people, it's wokeness, as opposed to speaking to the entire audience, unlike how Hollywood was, and also kid culture was for the last several decades. So I don't know.
Right. Yeah, and I think that also it's that kind of like, in many ways it's kind of like the whole Make America Great Again, but for like cartoons, and for nerd culture. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, I get that. I mean, I totally understand that. As an Asian man, I totally watched those 80 cartoons. I did not see. I mean, yes, I saw that. Just as an example, G.I. Joe. I saw Roadblock as being black, and I saw, and that was kind of like the only like person of color. But did it take me away from the show? No. I mean, did it make it less heroic? No. I still enjoyed it, but yeah, it's definitely a great thing to kind of have representation, because representation does matter and representation sells. Because you have a different audience. You're trying to appeal to a different audience, even though we as people of color, men of color that grew up with it, it's nice to see that representation being revealed. And it's unfortunate that that people see that as kind of like, oh, you're being too woke, and but I see it as progress.
Mm-hmm.
Other people see it as if they're more conservative, they might see it as though what the heck has happened to my world, to my worldview. So that is something that I think that a lot of people still struggle with, not just in this country, but also overall in the world, struggling with this type of these cultural changes that are happening around them.
Yeah, and you make a good point. You made a good point just now, which is why we probably shouldn't give this too much time, too much more time, or too much more oxygen. I think these people, as I mentioned at the top, are of this conversation, or this part of the conversation, are a small part of the people who have watched this show. They're just very loud. I think that Hollywood has found that representation sells. It doesn't just sell to widening your audience. If you involve more people will show up who you weren't necessarily targeting. But the studies have shown that white people, there a lot of white people buy things when they're more representative of the world that actually exists. So it's just a very small portion of angry white males on the internet who are yelling into the void, not necessarily the void, but they're yelling at their keyboards in all caps, and they demand to be heard. They review bomb the show, by the way. So, but that apparently that's not going to really affect whether or not it gets picked up or not, because the Rotten Tomatoes score the last time I checked was high, and they just they decided to, because they had nothing else to do, apparently, review bomb the show. So the audience score on Rotten Tomato was very low. So
yeah. I think that overall, I think that it is I think it's a small fraction of it, and I think that we're recording during the Olympics right now, and I think that a lot of that kind of similar vitriol and poison, I think it's a very small percentage of individuals, especially more conservative people that are out there that are kind of like airing out these type of grievances, airing out these type of complaints, and it's loud. And so I think that for the majority of it, majority of people, they're saying, hey, this is what's going on. This is the cultural shift that we're experiencing, and take it for what it is. And again, the last thing is that if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. It's like people like to hate watch a lot, and it's like you don't have to do that. If you're really upset and you really don't like it, then just go back to the 80s cartoons and watch those again and again and again. So
I mean,
that's just my take.
That's a good note to leave this conversation on. If you don't like it, don't watch it. There's so much content out there. You won't be there's too much content to get through in your lifetime. So just watch something else. If you wait a minute, there will be more Master of the Universe stuff specifically. Like, you can just wait for the next Masters of the Universe show, or the next the movie that they're going to make. It's coming soon. So just watch that. Spend your time on that, or watch anything else. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the ScarJo news.
Yeah.
So this is in a review because we already reviewed it. We just talk a little bit about Scarlett Johansson suing Disney over the Black Widow movie. What do you make of that? I mean, I think I talked about this way back in January when we did our most anticipated movies, and so we speculated whether or not Black Widow was going to be released on Disney Plus, because it didn't look very good at the time. It wasn't January. Was it January? No, it was January. It was like earlier. It's January, February. Yeah. I think it was February that we took. Maybe it was end of January, but it doesn't matter. We did our most anticipated, and we talked about Black Widow. Yeah.
Right. So at the time it was already delayed, and so we were kind of like discussing whether or not it should be released on Disney Plus. Right. And so there was some rumblings at that time about whether or not Scarlett Johansson was going to get paid, basically, because the box office, if you are going to release it on Disney Plus, you're going to take a hit on your box office. That means a hit on her salary.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, we kind of anticipated this, and it wasn't a shock to me that she took this on. And I think that, the main basis of it, kind of like, if you don't want to kind of dig deeper into the details about it, is that basically Disney Plus is owned by Disney. And so all the money that comes from Disney Plus goes to Disney. And so people like Scarlett Johansson are saying, wait a minute, you released my movie on streaming platform, and so I'm not getting any money from that. And I'm just getting money from whatever box office receipts that's going to be in the theaters. And so it isn't fair that Disney kind of gets all of that and she doesn't get a cut of it. Now, on the flip side, that's going to open up a Pandora's box of other actors or other people that's going to say, hey, where's my cut? And so that kind of like maybe potentially kind of upends this whole streaming business model, because all that money goes to them. I think Netflix does it a little differently, because I think Netflix does it a little differently. I don't kind of know the details of it, but I think that that's kind of like the premise of it. Is just this. It's not so much about the it's not so much about the money, because again, Disney's wealthy, Scarlett Johansson's wealthy. I think it's more of, for her and for her team and her, it's more of the principle of it. And also I think that it leads to a bigger question about this whole business model of streaming.
Yeah, I mean, we usually don't talk about the business aspect of
Yeah.
I guess show business, but I found this story fascinating. I mean, they're both richer than us, but there's orders of magnitude between Scarlett Johansson's money and Disney's money, which I can understand why she wants to make sure she gets all her money. So I'm not really. Scarlett Johansson is problematic in lots of different ways, and she keeps putting her foot in her mouth. Just a couple weeks ago, as they were promoting this movie, she started talking up Joss Whedon, and everyone else on the panel were like looking at her, it's like, what's wrong with you? You don't. So she's gonna do. ScarJo's gonna do what ScarJo does. She doesn't really care what people think, and for some reason she hasn't been canceled because of any of this stuff. And I can this just seems like a very ScarJo move, but like this is one of the moves that I make. I feel like it makes more sense. Makes more sense to me, because if they had it in her contract that it wasn't going to be released, having seen the movie, it seems like she obviously took a back seat in spotlighting herself. She could have gone into this movie with sort of an ego, like some of the dudes do about their movies. I can't ever lose a fight. I can't whatever. I have to be on. I have to be the main focus of the movie. She wasn't the main focus of the movie. It was an ensemble movie, and she was more. If she took that backseat as a star, that means that she was taking sort of a front seat as the executive, a producer, right?
Right.
So part of her deal was, as the executive producer, I'm going to make the best movie possible, and I want to get the benefit of that. So
of course
they're taking away her cut by pocketing all that money from Disney Plus. And I mean, I appreciate being able to watch it Disney Plus. I actually haven't watched it on Disney Plus yet. I only watched it in the theaters, but I appreciate it if I want to go back and I can see it without waiting 45 days. But they're not doing that to any other Marvel movie, apparently. Just her movie, and they delayed her movie for years.
Yes,
as we discussed when we were reviewing it. It sucks that this happened during a pandemic, but like her movie was going to be released and then a pandemic happened, but it could have been avoided if they just had released it after Civil War, which is when it takes place. If they had just planned it like that. So this is only the second female-led movie from Marvel for some reason.
Right.
I think they're starting to wise up about these things, but they definitely were slow and way behind for the first what is it, 11 years, 12 years now,
Yeah.
of the MCU.
Right.
Because we were just talking about this with the Moto conversation. I mean, a lot of their movies were headed by white dudes, basically, until they decided to diversify a little bit. So I don't know. I think that she has a good case.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that some people might think that this opens up possibilities for them, but I don't know that any other movie this year, except for the maybe no, I was gonna say maybe Dune, but I don't think Dune is gonna ever make as much as the Black Widow movie could have made if it was a normal year. So I know that the director from that movie is really upset that it's going to HBO Max.
HBO Max, yeah.
So I don't know, he might too.
Right.
Later on, but I can't think of anyone else who lost as much money as probably as she did on this deal. But
Yeah,
since
I think that there's a lot of sympathy for her because of the fact that yes, she is controversial at times, and I think answering your question about why she hasn't been canceled, I think because she's kind of like one of the first ones to kind of hit that gauntlet
Mhm.
of of going through that gauntlet of going back to Iron Man 2, she was kind of a side character, and
Right.
so she wasn't fleshed out, and so you're going from that to like it took her 10 years to get to this point of a very fully fleshed character that has her own movie,
Yeah.
an ensemble movie, and that she is the executive producer of the movie,
Right.
and so I think that she should be paid for that, and that she's been through again a gauntlet of to try to get this movie done. And then just unfortunately, pandemic hit that she didn't reap the benefits of all of it. And I think that she should be justified for it. And then she also should be justified for a cut of the money from Disney Plus. But it is very complicated because it could lead to other lawsuits that could happen. And so I just think that yeah, I think for her it's a special case because I think that of course she has a whole team of lawyers that are able to kind of weed through this and try to play out all the scenarios and kind of make this calculating decision. And I think that she probably has learned from her somewhat from her past ways of how to deal with kind of Hollywood and deal with that kind of patriarchal structure. And so I think that this is kind of her way to kind of say, no, I'm not doing this. I mean, I should be paid. I should be paid for what I got. And quite frankly, I don't know how much Robert Downey Jr. got for Infinity War and for Endgame. I think he got, I don't remember what the number was. It's something ridiculous, like 70 something million.
I'm sure.
So,
Yeah.
so it was like, she's seeing him getting huge paydays, and then she got this, and this is kind of like her pinnacle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she got like 20 million for this. So it's like, that's nothing compared to what, Iron Man got. So it's like,
Yeah,
there's a lot of things going on with
not only that, but I think every movie that he's in, even the Spider-Man movie, he got part of the box office and in the back.
There you go.
The back end. So yeah, this was her big shot to. So stepping back a little bit, I said that she hasn't been canceled yet, and I didn't want to feed into that current political conversation. I don't think that anyone gets canceled. There's just consequences. She hasn't had much consequences to the random problematic things that she said, and she just says them, and people are outraged, but it doesn't dry up opportunities for her. Whereas for whereas for someone else, it might dry up opportunities. There haven't been major consequences for her yet, because I mean she hasn't been physically hurting someone or being or assaulting anyone. She's been saying stupid things. So yeah. But
I think that she gets a lot of sympathy because of a lot of the sexist comments that came at her during like any type of like press junket or something like that. I mean, if you go online and you go on YouTube and check out all of those kind of comments that she has to face, I think that she gets a lot of sympathy from that, even though she has had a lot of, again, questionable decisions and questionable comments in the past. and questionable kind of viewpoints and things like that. But by the same token, she has taken a lot as well on the other end, and it's just like cringe. It's like really cringy stuff that people say to her, in front of her face, during interviews. So I think that because of that, she gets a lot of sympathy, and also I think that it's not to give a pass on her other things, but that's where I think it comes from.
Yeah, and honestly, people are complicated, right? They're
Mhm.
she doesn't necessarily have to be a saint for you to
Of course.
feel sorry for the fact, or be upset about the fact of how she's treated as a woman in Hollywood. I mean, people
Hmm.
can be people are complex.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that people see how she's treated, and also they respect her as an actress, and they respect her as a
Hmm.
businesswoman because she made this happen. And when she started in those Marvel movies, she was taking a job, and she was just happy to have the job, and then she's matured as an actress and as a businesswoman in Hollywood. So it's good. It was good to see that trajectory. Even though she stumbled several times, and she's also living in public, so people are, like I
Of
said.
course.
So I think you're right. I think that's probably why she hasn't had as much of a blowback as you would think. Um, which, like I said, is probably a mix of things. You see her trajectory, but you also know that she's talented because you see her do other things. So
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
that, like
Absolutely.
as I said, I think that she's justified because she probably was thinking this is the last time she's going to show up in Marvel. She actually said that several times in all the promotion for the movie, and she wanted to bank a bunch of money so she could do projects that didn't pay her money because
Absolutely.
like the what was the movie that she did with uh, um about the divorce, was it called?
Marriage Story.
Marriage
It's on
Story.
Netflix. It's
Yeah, yeah.
it's wonderful. It's a
It's
wonderful
it's
film.
very good, but I'm sure she wasn't paid much
Yeah.
for that.
No,
So she wants to
probably
she
not.
wants to be able to do things like that
Yeah.
and be able to maintain a certain lifestyle. Maybe she wants to be able to produce some movies. You don't know what she had that money earmarked for. So I understand
Hmm.
it's a lot of money. It's rich people fighting with rich people, but if she had that earmarked for funding movies directed by women or people of color or whatever, are things that wouldn't have been funded. I mean, she should get her money, right? So
Yeah, I think that one of the models I would think in terms of in terms of trying to emulate is probably Reese Witherspoon, because I think that she has her own production company, and
mm-hmm.
she's done quite a bit in terms of behind the scenes in order to kind of raise up the profile of women and behind the cameras. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's kind of that may be a course where she is trying to go after,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be just spending more time with family. I mean she is recently married, and she has a daughter that's growing, and so family time is very important. So if you just put that money away and then just be spending time with your family, that's also very justifiable as well. So there's many different avenues in which she can go to. But yeah, that big payday, you only get a certain amount of times in which you're going to get paid. It's not like regular average people that get a yearly salary every year. They only have a couple of shots at it, and so they need to kind of make that money as much as they can so that they can they,
Yeah.
they can live out their lives.
Even if she's in another franchise, even if she's in another blockbuster, she's not going to be able to get the force of the Marvel money multiplier behind it. It's never going to be a
Right.
movie as big as this movie could have been. And she put in the time there. She was there from almost the very
Hmm.
beginning, right? She's part of the reason that
Yep.
she's built it up. She helped. She was a portion of the team that built it up to $1 billion almost every movie. Not every
Yep.
movie, but multi billions of dollars brand. She's part of the
Right.
reason. She's part of the reason that it sold to Disney for billions of dollars because
Hmm.
So I can see her saying I should get a little bit of that if I'm leaving, if they killed me off. She's not in control of the property, And if they kill off her character, she has no control over that. But she should probably get a piece of the pie as a parting gift.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think that this is where I kind of think Disney kind of miscalculated and said, and just say, look, we'll just, what amount do you want, and then just negotiate. And then I think that Disney was trying to play hardball, and so she was like, okay, I'm just going to sue you now,
yeah,
because I think that they could have done this very quietly and just said, okay, we really appreciate all of you done. You should deserve a cut of this from Disney Plus, and then just not even leak it out to the news and leak it out to the press and be done with it. But
yeah. Because
Disney's very cheap right now, and and I think that it really reflects on them as a company right now as well, being more about their bottom line and things. And I can get into that, the cheapness of them later on. I mean, that's a whole different conversation, actually.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe The Rock is going to come after them next because his movie came out today, and I barely remembered that it came out today, because it came out in Disney Plus, and it's
Yep.
sort of in the theaters as well. I don't know what the
Yes.
reviews look like. I will probably check it out this weekend. I mean, we may review it. So yeah.
Hmm.
All right. I think that's enough movie business talk.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other final thoughts before we wrap up the stream? We've been talking for a
Yeah, I
little
think that
over an hour.
I think oh yeah, definitely. I think there's some very fascinating things that are happening with Star Wars, and also with Marvel coming up. So we'll see what happens with the next series, which is What If. And so
Yeah.
looking forward to kind of seeing what they have in store, and how, and does it tie to Loki.
Yeah.
So that'll be the
So
very big, kind of the big overarching question of that series.
what if will be not next week, but the week after next. So what we will probably do is stream next week and just talk about what the news of the week, some genre stuff, and just general stuff, and then we'll talk it. And then the week after next, we will talk about what if. And John may join us again. He's wrapping up some of his family and business stuff, so he'll rejoin. And in all this, we might have new contributors as well joining us, joining the team. So, all right. Thanks for watching. We are really interested in hearing what you guys think about anything that we talked about today. The Bad Batch, the Master of the Universe Revelation controversy, or Scarlett Johansson suing Disney. So comment down below, like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thanks. Bye, guys.